Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I always thought that if my relationship ended, it would be with dramatic arguments and slammed doors. I thought there would be late-night conversations trying to salvage what we had, desperate attempts to prove my worth, maybe even some grand romantic gesture to win her back. But when Victoria sat across from me in our Lincoln Park kitchen on that Saturday morning and casually delivered an ultimatum that would change everything, something inside me simply clicked into place. She didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. I was making pancakes, the Saturday routine we'd fallen into over 4 years together. The smell of coffee filled our renovated kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows that overlooked the courtyard. It was supposed to be peaceful, normal. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, still scrolling. "I need you to be more spontaneous, more exciting. Like the guys I work with, they're always planning adventures, taking risks. You're just so predictable." I flipped a pancake, keeping my voice casual. "What are you saying?" She finally looked up, and there was something calculated in her expression, something rehearsed. "I'm saying I need you to change. Be more like, I don't know, someone who surprises me. Or maybe I need to find someone who will." That's when it happened. The moment of absolute clarity. I could see exactly what this was: a power play, a manipulation tactic designed to make me panic and scramble to prove myself. She expected me to immediately start planning elaborate dates, promising to be different, maybe even getting defensive about all the ways I already was spontaneous. This was a script she'd written in her head, and my part was to play the desperate boyfriend trying to keep her. I set down the spatula and turned off the stove. My voice came out completely neutral, almost businesslike. "Okay." Victoria's eyebrows shot up. "Okay, what?" "Okay, you should find someone who will." She laughed, but it was nervous, uncertain. "Wait, what?" "I'm not saying I want to break up. I'm just saying." "You just gave me an ultimatum," I interrupted gently. "Change, or you'll leave." "I'm choosing option 3. You can leave now." The color drained from her face. This clearly wasn't the script. "Ethan." "Tyler, let's just talk about this first. I'm just being honest about my needs. And I'm being honest about mine. I don't change for threats." The silence that followed was heavy. I watched her process what was happening, saw the exact moment she realized I was serious. She'd expected panic. She'd expected promises. She'd expected control. Instead, I was handing her exactly what she'd asked for: the door. "You're being ridiculous," she said, standing up. "This is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. You just shut down instead of fighting for us." I walked past her to the bedroom and opened my laptop. Within minutes, I'd created a shared spreadsheet. "Let's divide assets fairly. The lease is in both names. I'll take it over, or we can both leave." "This is insane," Victoria said from the doorway. "We're not actually breaking up." I continued typing, adding columns for furniture, joint purchases, bank accounts. "You're right. You're breaking up with me. I'm just making it easier." She watched me work for a full minute, her expression shifting from disbelief to anger to something like panic. "So that's it? Over one conversation?" I looked up, met her eyes directly. "No, I'm doing this because you threatened to leave if I didn't become someone else. I'm just taking you seriously." "Fine," she snapped, grabbing her keys from the dresser. "If you're going to be like this, maybe we don't need space. I'll stay at my sister's. We'll talk when you've calmed down." "I am calm. Take whatever time you need. I'll have the spreadsheet finished by tonight." She left. The door didn't slam. It closed with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than any dramatic exit could have been. I sat there in the sudden silence of our apartment, waiting for the wave of emotion to hit. The heartbreak, the regret, the desperate urge to call her back. It never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief. Like a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it had suddenly lifted. I looked around the apartment, at the life we'd built together, and realized I'd been shrinking myself for so long that I'd almost disappeared entirely. That evening, I sent the spreadsheet. The email subject line read, "Asset division, please review." The message was brief and cordial. "Victoria, I've listed our shared items and accounts. Please review and let me know if I've missed anything. You mentioned wanting to collect your belongings. Would next Saturday work? Take care, Tyler." No emotion. No plea for reconsideration. Just logistics. Her response came an hour later. This is childish. Call me when you're ready to actually talk. I didn't call. The text started the next day. Sunday morning. Tyler, seriously? You're really not going to respond? I read it. Didn't answer. Monday. I talked to my sister. She thinks you're being controlling by not communicating. Tuesday. Okay, I get it. You're upset. Can we please just talk about this like adults? Wednesday. I miss you. I didn't mean it the way it came out. Thursday. Tyler, this silent treatment is manipulative. At least tell me you're okay. Friday. Fine. I'll come get my stuff on Saturday. This is exactly why we had problems. You shut down instead of fighting for us. I read every message. I just didn't respond. It wasn't about punishing her or playing games. I genuinely had nothing to say. She'd made her choice when she delivered that ultimatum, and I'd made mine when I accepted it. What would more words accomplish? That week, I did something I hadn't done in months. I focused on myself. I rejoined the gym, Equinox on Franklin Street. The membership I'd let lapse because Victoria always wanted to do couples workouts that never actually happened. I went every morning before work, finding a meditation in the routine. I wasn't working out to get revenge or to show her what she was missing. I was working out because it felt good to do something just for me. I took my camera out for the first time in over a year and walked the river walk at sunset, capturing the way light played off the Chicago River. Photography had been my passion before Victoria, something I'd quietly abandoned because she always had better plans for our weekends. I called up old college friends I'd been neglecting and made plans to actually see them. I stayed late at work on a project I'd been passionate about, not because I was avoiding home, but because I finally had the energy to care about my career again. By the time Saturday rolled around, I realized something profound. I didn't miss her. I missed the idea of her, the version of her from 3 years ago who used to laugh at my jokes and hold my hand in public and make me feel like I was enough. But that person had been gone for a long time, and I'd been too afraid to admit it. Victoria arrived at 4 p.m. with her sister in tow. I'd packed everything neatly, labeled boxes stacked by the door. The apartment already looked different. I'd rearranged furniture, hung some of my photography prints, added plants. Her absence was already integrated into the space. Hey, Victoria said, attempting warmth. Thanks for packing everything. No problem, I replied, polite but distant. Everything should be there. You can check the list. She looked around, and I saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of regret. The place looks different already. Yeah, fresh start. How have you been? She asked, trying to create an opening. We haven't talked. I've been good, busy with work and getting back to the gym. Right. There was an edge to her voice now. The silent treatment. I kept my tone even matter of fact. Not silent treatment. Just nothing left to say. Everything important was in the spreadsheet. Her sister stepped forward, arms crossed. Tyler, Victoria told me you basically shut down all communication. Don't you think that's a bit extreme? I turned to her sister, keeping my voice polite but firm. I took Victoria's ultimatum seriously. She wanted change or someone else. I gave her the freedom to find that. What would more conversation accomplish? Victoria jumped in, defensive now. I never said I wanted to break up. I looked at her directly, and for the first time, I let a hint of emotion show, a slight, knowing smile. You gave me an ultimatum about becoming a different person, or you'd find someone who would excite you. That's exactly what you said. I just saved us both time. I watched something shift in her expression, the realization that she'd lost control of this narrative, that her strategy had backfired completely. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was simply done, and there was nothing she could do about it. Can we maybe talk? She asked, softer now, vulnerable. Without her here? Just us? I checked my watch. I have plans in 20 minutes. Is everything accounted for? Plans. Her voice cracked slightly. With who? Friends. Photography walk in Millennium Park. I met her eyes. Victoria, you wanted spontaneous. But it turns out I was spontaneous before. You just stopped noticing. They carried boxes to her car. I held the door, polite but detached. Victoria lingered at the threshold, searching my face for something. Anger, sadness, any emotion she could work with. You know what your problem is? She said suddenly, voice sharp. You never fought for anything. Not for us, not for me. You just give up. I met her eyes calmly. I gave up? You're the one who delivered an ultimatum. You're the one who threatened to find someone else. That's not. I was trying to communicate my needs. By threatening to leave? That's not communication, Victoria. That's manipulation. Her face flushed. So what? You're just going to let me walk out? Prove me right that you never cared enough to fight? I'm going to respect your decision, I said evenly. You wanted this door open. I'm not going to block it just so you can feel pursued. You want out. You're out. Clean and simple. Unbelievable, she muttered. You're really going to stand there acting like you're taking the high road when you're just being a coward. If that's what helps you sleep tonight, I replied. Take care of yourself, Victoria. I closed the door gently but firmly. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there for a moment, her sister tugging at her arm. Then they were gone. I went to Millennium Park. I took photographs. I met up with friends. And for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. The next few weeks, I disappeared from social media entirely. Not because I was hurt or hiding, but because I needed space to rebuild without an audience. I deactivated Instagram and Facebook, kept only LinkedIn for professional purposes. I didn't block Victoria. I just removed myself from the equation entirely. What I didn't know was that this silence, this complete absence, was driving her insane in ways my anger never could have. I found out later, through mutual friends, that she spent those first weeks obsessively checking for any sign of me online. She'd call friends asking if they'd heard from me, if they knew how I was doing. They'd tell her I seemed fine, better than fine actually, and she'd go quiet. But I wasn't thinking about Victoria. I was rediscovering who I was without her. Sitting alone in my apartment one night, about 3 weeks after she'd left, I finally let myself examine the wreckage of our relationship. Not with anger or blame, but with the clarity that comes from distance. I needed to understand how I'd let things get so bad, how I'd missed all the signs. And there they were, laid out in my memory like a timeline I'd refused to see while living through it. It started about 8 months ago. Victoria began mentioning her co-workers constantly, one name in particular, Graham. Graham stayed late to help with the pitch. He's so dedicated. Graham and the team are training for a marathon. They're so disciplined. At the time, I dismissed it as normal workplace talk. Now I could see it for what it was, groundwork. She was building a narrative where other men were more ambitious, more exciting, more everything. 6 months ago, her social media presence shifted. She stopped tagging me in posts. Photos became solo shots or group pictures with work friends. She started posting gym selfies and night out photos, curating an image of single life while we were still together. When I'd mentioned it casually, she'd said she was just being more independent. I told myself that was healthy. 5 months ago, the affection withdrew. Physical intimacy became rare and transactional. Compliments stopped. The little things, making coffee for each other, leaving notes, reaching for each other's hands, all disappeared. When I brought it up, she'd call me needy. So I tried to need less. 4 months ago, the late night started. Happy hours with colleagues became multiple times per week. That name kept appearing, Graham. Her explanations became defensive when I asked simple questions about her evening. I remember one night specifically. She came home at midnight, and I was still awake, reading. Fun night. I'd ask casually. It was fine. Just work stuff. She didn't look at me, already heading to the bathroom. Graham was there. She stopped in the doorway, turned slowly. Why do you always ask about Graham specifically? Because you mention him specifically. A lot. Oh my God, Tyler. Why don't you trust me? This is work networking. You're being paranoid. I'm just asking who you were with. You're interrogating me is what you're doing. This is exactly what I mean about you being controlling. I wasn't being controlling. I was watching her pull away and asking why. But she'd turned it around, made me the problem. So I'd backed off, not wanting to seem like the jealous boyfriend she was painting me as. 3 months ago, the future faded from her vocabulary. When I mentioned planning a summer vacation, she was noncommittal. When I suggested looking at bigger apartments, she said, let's not rush. Any conversation about long-term plans triggered irritation. I'd given her space to breathe. 2 months ago, everything I did became wrong. My music taste was boring. My weekend plans were predictable. My friends were low energy. She was manufacturing distance, building a case for incompatibility, creating a narrative where breaking up was inevitable. One Saturday, I'd suggested we visit the Art Institute like we used to. She'd rolled her eyes. That's so us. So predictable. Can't we do something different? Like what? I don't know. Something spontaneous. Something fun. Okay, what do you want to do? I shouldn't have to plan everything, Tyler. That's the whole point. You should just surprise me. So I'd planned a surprise dinner at a new restaurant downtown. Made reservations, the whole thing. When I told her about it, she'd seemed annoyed. You're trying too hard now. It feels forced. I couldn't win. If I planned nothing, I was boring. If I planned something, I was trying too hard. The goalposts kept moving because they were never real to begin with. She'd already decided I wasn't enough. Everything after that was just confirmation bias. And I'd spent those 2 months trying to smooth things over, trying to be better, trying to be enough. But I was never going to be enough because she'd already decided I wasn't. The ultimatum wasn't a cry for change. It was her final attempt to make me the bad guy. She wanted me to reject her demands so she could tell everyone I refused to grow. Or she wanted me to scramble and beg so she could feel powerful before leaving anyway. She'd expected drama, expected emotion, expected control. What she got was acceptance, and she had no idea what to do with that. I realized something else that night. I wasn't losing her. I'd already lost her months ago. The relationship had been over long before that Saturday morning. I'd just been too afraid to see it. But I wasn't afraid anymore. The following week, I reactivated my social media accounts. But they looked different now. I didn't post about relationships or heartbreak or moving on. I posted about life, photos from my photography walks, check-ins at the gym, dinner with friends, a work achievement I was proud of. I was living, not performing. There was a difference. What I didn't know was that Victoria was watching every single post. I found out later she'd moved quickly after our breakup. Within 2 weeks of collecting her things, she was posting photos with Graham. Dinner at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse. Weekend trips to Milwaukee. They looked happy, exciting, spontaneous, everything she'd accused me of not being. I saw the posts. I felt nothing. But Victoria couldn't stop looking at mine. Friends told me she'd asked about me constantly those first few months. Was I dating anyone? Did I seem upset? Was I talking about her? The answer was always the same. No. He seems great actually. Really happy. And that, I learned, was destroying her more than any angry confrontation ever could. 10 weeks after the ultimatum, I ran into them at Whole Foods on Halsted. I was in the produce section, texting a colleague about a project, when I heard my name. Tyler. I looked up. Victoria stood there with Graham. They'd clearly been arguing. Voices low but tense, his phone in his hand, his attention elsewhere even as she tried to engage him. Oh, hey, I said, offering a brief polite smile. Graham sized me up with barely concealed hostility. This him? I ignored him entirely, looking back at Victoria. How are you? Good. Great. She gestured awkwardly. This is Graham. I nodded at him. Nice to meet you. Then I returned to my shopping. You look good, Victoria said quickly, not ready for me to disengage. Different. Thanks. Life's been good. I continued selecting produce, unbothered. Graham spoke up, loud enough for me to hear clearly. Can we go? I have to take a call. I glanced up, caught Victoria's expression. She looked embarrassed. Small. I recognized that look because I'd worn it myself toward the end of our relationship. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime? Victoria asked, trying to extend the interaction. Catch up. I paused, considered it genuinely, then shook my head gently. I don't think that's a good idea. But I hope you're happy. That's it. Her voice had an edge now. After 4 years, that's all you have to say to me? What do you want me to say, Victoria? I don't know. Something. Anything. You look at me like I'm a stranger. We are strangers now, I said simply. You made sure of that. Graham interrupted, impatient. Babe, seriously. I have a call. She shot him an irritated look, then turned back to me. You seem different. I am different. Turns out when you stop trying to be what someone else wants, you remember who you actually are. The words landed. I could see it in her face, a flicker of recognition, maybe regret. But Graham was already walking away, phone to his ear, not even checking if she was following. I should go, she said quietly. Yeah, you should. I walked to the checkout, leaving her standing there. Behind me, I heard Graham, already on his phone. Victoria, come on. That should have been the end of it. But over the next few months, Victoria's new relationship became a mirror she couldn't look away from. Graham started staying late at work constantly. Vague explanations. Defensive reactions when she asked reasonable questions. You're being paranoid. You're being clingy. This is exactly why my last relationship ended. The phrases were familiar because they'd come from her own mouth months earlier, directed at me. Graham stopped inviting her to work events. When she asked why, you wouldn't fit in with that crowd. He posted photos from these events without her. She watched other women comment on his posts. She checked his social media obsessively. She was living my experience. And every moment of it was teaching her exactly what she'd done to me. By month 5, Graham gave her an ultimatum. You need to be less clingy. Stop asking about my schedule. Be more independent. The irony was completely lost on him, but crushing to Victoria. She tried to be the cool girlfriend. It was exhausting. Nothing she did was right. She was too available or too distant, too interested or too detached. The goalposts kept moving because, like she'd done with me, Graham had already made his decision. He was just waiting for the right moment. That moment came at month 6. Graham ended it abruptly. There was someone else, naturally. A colleague. He moved on immediately, posting new relationship photos within a week. Victoria was devastated in a way she'd never allowed me to be. 2 weeks after her breakup with Graham, my phone rang. Friday evening. I almost didn't answer, then decided to pick up out of curiosity more than anything else. Tyler? It's me. Her voice was small, uncertain, nothing like the confident woman who delivered that ultimatum 6 months ago. Hey, what's up? Can we talk? We're talking now. I mean really talk. Maybe meet for coffee. I leaned back on my couch. What's this about, Victoria? Her breath caught. I made a mistake. With us. With everything. Okay. That's it. Just okay? What do you want me to say? She exhaled shakily. I saw it all. What you were doing. How you moved on. And then Graham and I broke up. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Frustration crept into her voice. You don't sound sorry. You don't sound anything. I don't know what you want from this conversation. I want you to know I understand now. Her voice cracked. What I did to you. How I made you feel. Graham did the same thing to me, and I finally saw it. The comparisons, the distance, She trailed off. Everything. I let the silence sit for a moment. That must have been hard. Tyler, I'm trying to apologize. I know. And I hear you. Do you? Because you sound like you're talking to a stranger. Victoria, it's been 6 months. We haven't spoken. You've been in a whole relationship that's now over. I've built a completely different life. What did you expect? I expected. She paused. I don't know. Maybe that we could try again, now that I understand what I lost. No. The word hung in the air. Simple. Final. Just no. That's it. What happened with Graham? I'm genuinely sorry you went through that. But you understanding what you did to me doesn't undo it. And it doesn't mean we're right for each other. But I've changed. I've grown. That's good. Really. But growth doesn't erase choices. You gave me an ultimatum because you thought I wasn't enough. I took you seriously and moved on. That door closed the day you walked out. So I'm just supposed to accept that? Desperation colored every word. That I lost you forever because of one mistake? Not one mistake. A series of choices over months. The ultimatum was just the final one. Tyler, please. Victoria, here's what I learned. I interrupted gently. You can't get back time. You can't unsay words. You can't unmake choices. When you told me to change, or you'd find someone else, you showed me what you really thought of me. And I believed you. The man you're talking to now? He wouldn't have existed if you'd stayed. I needed you to leave so I could find myself again. So that's it. She was crying now. You're better off without me? We're both better off. You needed to learn something you couldn't learn with me. And I needed to rebuild something I'd let deteriorate. But now that we've grown in different directions. And that's okay. A long pause. Then, barely a whisper. Do you hate me? I considered the question honestly. No, I don't think about you enough to hate you. I paused, realizing how that sounded. That sounds cruel. I don't mean it to be. I mean I've moved on. Completely. You're part of my past, and I'm grateful for what I learned. But that's where you stay. I miss you. You miss the version of me that would have taken you back after this call. That person doesn't exist anymore. I'm sorry. For all of it. I believe you. And I hope you find what you're looking for. But it's not with me. Is there anything I could say that would change your mind? No. Not even. Her voice broke. Not even if I told you I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day I left? That Graham was a mistake from the beginning? That I see you everywhere I go. Especially not that, I said gently. Because that's not love, Victoria. That's regret. There's a difference. How can you be so cold? I'm not cold. I'm just clear. For the first time in years, I'm clear about what I want and what I don't. And I don't want to be with someone who needed to lose me to appreciate me. So that's your final answer? Just no? That's my final answer. The silence that followed was long, heavy, final. Okay, she said eventually. I guess. Take care of yourself, Tyler. You too, Victoria. I ended the call and set my phone down. Then I did something I'd done after every major moment in this journey. I checked my emotional state. Searched for pain, for regret, for doubt. There was nothing. No sadness, no triumph, no anger. Just peace. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday morning, I stood in my kitchen making pancakes. The same Saturday routine, but now it was mine alone. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Coffee brewed. My phone buzzed. Not Victoria, but a colleague I'd been talking to more lately. Someone new, with potential, but no pressure. I responded, making plans for a photography walk later. Life continued. Victoria was a chapter that had closed, and I felt no need to reread it. Some people spend their whole lives trying to get back what they threw away. I spent 6 months realizing I never wanted it back at all. The apartment was mine now. Not ours, mine. The life was mine. The future was mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't have to shrink myself to fit someone else's idea of who I should be. Victoria had wanted exciting. She'd wanted spontaneous. What she hadn't realized was that I'd always been those things. She'd just stopped seeing me, stopped appreciating me, stopped choosing me. And now, someone else would. I looked out the window at Chicago stretching before me. Endless possibilities in every direction. I was alone, but not lonely. Free, and finally, completely myself. The ultimatum she'd delivered that Saturday morning was supposed to give her power. Instead, it gave me clarity. She'd expected me to fight for her, to prove my worth, to become someone different just to keep her. What she got was a man who knew his worth didn't need proving. A man who understood that the right person wouldn't ask him to change. A man who had the strength to walk away from someone who'd already left. She gave me an ultimatum. Change, or she'd find someone else. I said okay, find them. She wasn't ready for that answer. Neither of us knew it then, but in that moment, I'd won. Not because she lost, but because I'd found myself again. And that was worth more than any relationship built on ultimatums and conditions ever could be.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.